you're a convict, and I'm a cop. I could shoot you and get away with it. I said, sound like we need to get in the steps. Anyway, I'm Paul, I'm an alcoholic.
Hey, Paul.
Very grateful to be here. My sobriety date is January 15th of 98. I need to do something with this. Thank y'all for the group, for the present. You know what? I've already been given, though. I've already been given. And that's one of the reasons why I accepted. I'm gonna shed this stuff because my sponsor is Al G. His sobriety date is February 22nd, 1980, and he would have a cow if I showed up without a jacket on. So y'all can tell him I had a jacket on. But anyway, my sobriety date is February 15th, 98, and I can't really take credit for that. I just couldn't do it any longer. Alcohol had quit working, and what I mean by that, if you're new, when alcohol's working, I don't care, I just drink. And alcohol gives me the same things that it talks about in Vision for You. It gives me release from care, boredom, and worry, a joyous intimacy with friends, and a sense that all is well. Really, it takes me beyond that. It takes me to a place of oblivion to where I don't have to worry about anything. And then that allows me to act uncontrollably. Hence the forward PD. I got arrested the first time in kindergarten. And I remember my mother, she said, I was in a group in Houston a couple of years ago, and I hadn't thought about this in probably 40 years. But I remember my mother asked me, she said, didn't that bother you that officer, that you came down Baldwin Avenue in a police car? And I don't know what I said to her, but I know today it didn't bother me. And you know why it didn't bother me? I'm a 5-year-old and I'm changing price tags on Hot Wheels for model cars. Not thinking that the cashier knows that model car costs more than $1. You know, I'm the reason they have the scan deals now on the box. But that police officer showed me something that I didn't see again until I came to Alcoholics Anonymous. And what he showed me was care and concern. And I hadn't seen that. I didn't see it in my home. I didn't see it, you know, I grew up, my mother belonged to a religion that was teaching the world was coming to an end in 1975. I was told from as early as I can remember that my father wanted me aborted. And from that point forward, I was a burden on everybody. And I didn't know this then, but I know it now. I made the decision as a small child to have a good time until the world came to an end, and hence alcohol. And you know, some of you older folks probably remember Johnny Carson. I have a brother that's used to have a brother. He was 17 years older than me, and him and my mother were having a beer. They weren't getting drunk. They were having a beer and they were watching Johnny, and Foster Brooks was on, and you know, those that know Foster Brooks, was his skits were all about drinking and being drunk, and they were laughing at him, you know, and so I just reached over and grabbed one of his beer and just took a swig, and it started acting like Foster Brooks, like I was drunk, and my mother and brother started laughing at me. And you know, I've heard people in the rooms talk about when they took that first drink, they felt it, you know, they felt it go down, and they just, you know, they just all the way to their toes, and it just changed how they felt. That's not what happened for me, because I just took a swig. But I'll tell you what did happen for me was that was the first time at the age of 5 years old that I had felt acceptance in my own home. And so although I didn't have the physical, I had the emotional. It gave me something I couldn't get anywhere else. I didn't know that, you know, I had no idea of any of that, but I know that today. And so then I began chasing right after that. And I'm not gonna say I started drinking alcoholically, but I started drinking as fast as I could. And it just was that way. First time I came to, I was making a joke to Troy about this caution tape. You know, I could really cut my story down real quick and just tell you, I should have had crime scene tape with me at all times. I went to a funeral, I don't know what it is about funerals, but I went to a funeral, I don't know, I guess it was about 8 years ago, and it was an old childhood friend, and we'd done a lot of things together. And his older brother was a member of a motorcycle gang called the Sons of Satan. And so they roll up, it's about 20 or 30 of them. And when the funeral was over, we're all out there, you know, talking about old times, and a bunch of old guys from the hood. And he comes over and looked like ZZ Top, you know what I mean? And comes over and he puts his arm around me. He said, you know, we're at his brother's funeral, and here's this leader of the Sons of Satan. He says, I just knew you and Larry were going to end up in prison for the rest of your life. I thought, well, if that doesn't say something, you know what I mean? The leader of the motorcycle club, worried about me going to jail, you know?
Oh, my goodness.
But that became a regular deal, though. Going to jail became a regular thing, and it just, you know, it became a way of life. It became the only life I knew. It became what life, I mean, it was, I just never saw any need for school. I never saw any need for anything. I worked hard. I always worked hard. Always worked because I played hard, and so please forgive me. My daughter, I got to share this. My daughter graduated last night from the University of Oklahoma. I met her mother in AA. She was at my first meeting when I got back here in '98. And she was just being nice. She said, come back at the 6 tonight, I'll be here. And I'll go back over to my buddy's place. I said, man, I met this girl. She told me to come back at the 6 o'clock. And he said, hell, she's probably drunk. I think she was, but anyway. You know, if you're new and they smile at you, that doesn't mean they want to go out, okay?
Thank you.
Be nice.
That's what I thought. You told me to come back.
The alcoholic like me, if they smile at me, they got to want to go out, you know what I mean?
That's alcoholic.
Just leave them a smile, just give me that little nod, you know, and it's like, okay, I saw, she saw me. So we're going. But anyway, I absolutely insist on having fun in sobriety. I share this. I do a lot of service work today, but I don't really call it service work. You know, I shared this with somebody. It's great to see my friend Danny Brown. I lived vicariously through John Allred's tapes. I lived Danny Brown's life through John Allred. I had been given John Allred's tapes at 45 Days Sober, and John is hilarious. And I always like to take newcomers to John because he's, you know, when you're new, there's not a lot to laugh about, but when you listen to John, you can't help but laugh when you listen to him. And I asked him if he's grown any. I mean, he's still got, what has he got, 45 something? 44. He's still telling the same story. So, but anyway, but I was sharing with another guy, Ken D. I said it occurred to me that there's no real working of the 12th step. And Ken sobered up in 72. He said, what do you mean by that? And I said, well, when I hang up the phone talking to somebody I'm working with or whatever, and we get to a solution, I said, I don't hang up the phone and go, you know, I just did a 12 step. And I said, it's just what I do. It's who I am. It's what I've become. He said, Ken was from the Bronx, Puerto Rican from the Bronx that lives in California, so you can only imagine the accent. And he said, well, Paul, he said, you know, Bill tried to make it real simple for us. He said, I think if you'll go back and look at those steps, that first line says, having had. And so those first 11 steps give me the ability to have had a spiritual experience. And when I was new, really, that didn't appeal to me because I'd seen, you know, I had no choice but to only compare that to the religious dogma of what my mother was a part of. And so that aspect of the program didn't apply to me today, or it didn't interest me, I'll say it that way. But today, that's what it's all about. And rocking it into the fourth dimension, it's, you know, I'm been around a while, and I'm a slow learner, I guess. I've learned to say that. I'm beginning to start to get a little inkling of that. I was talking to John on the way up here. He said, it's funny that it's only taken you 28 years to get an inkling of that. And, but you know, it's like, I don't know about y'all, but you know, you'd be thinking about somebody, and all of a sudden they call. Or you call somebody, and they say, I was just thinking about you. And that's that fourth dimension. It's the spiritual realm. That's that broad highway, you know, that we get to traverse on. And overcoming self becomes the daily challenge. And so, anyway, when I first came to AA, it was 1987. I was first told about it when I was 14. It was in 1979. And that same older brother had a resentment. I came home drunk, saw his boots, filled them up, and woke up to the scent of pine sol. My stepmom, she said, I think you need to go to AA. I said, AA? What is AA? And she said, well, that's where people go that have a drinking problem. I said, I don't have a drinking problem. I'm good at it. I just, you know, gave me the wrong mix. And but drinking was my identity. How much I could drink, how much I could consume. It was who I was. It was what I was about. You know, I did not know that, you know. And so, I mean, a lot of these things that I share from the podium these days, it amazes me. You know, I remember, you know, I'm an electrician by trade and have been for a long time. And before I ever got my license, I started the electrical trade in 1984, and I was 13 years, or let's see, let me back up. I was in the trade 13 years before I ever got my license, and I couldn't get my license because I couldn't quit drinking long enough to study for the test. And that didn't happen until I got sober. But shortly after I got sober, I got my license. And then I did the next best thing, is I heard a couple of old timers talking about, they said they couldn't work for anybody, so they started their own business. I said, hey, that's me. And so, but really it's God's deal. And I just show up today. I wake up every day today in excitement about what's going to happen. Who am I going to meet? What's going to be presented to me? And the interesting thing to me is it has nothing to do with anything that I thought mattered. You know, when I got here, it was I wasn't going to drink because I was done. Because see, what I received, it took me 20 years sober to really realize what I had received that third night in detox, the last time. They took me to a meeting and got my chip, and I don't know why I feel the need to share this, but you know, treatment, you hear people talk about treatment facilities and this one's better than that one, or this one sucks, or whatever. And it's like, and I'm just going to tell you, all of them got the same function. They got two functions: detox you and introduce you to Alcoholics Anonymous. That's it. It doesn't matter where you go, whether you go to Betty Ford or the lowest one on the totem pole. Their function is to detox you and introduce you to the 12 steps of the program. That's it. So it doesn't matter where you go. It really doesn't. What really matters is if I'm ready or not. You know, I went to Wichita Falls State Hospital, and I remember that was in 1987, and you know, the heat was on pretty good, and so I went to they had this what they called the SARP-2 program, was Substance Abuse Recovery Program, and so it was a 28-day deal. Loved it, loved the camaraderie, and loved everything about it. And but I remember they gave us a tour. Now Wichita Falls State Hospital, that's where they lock up the mentally insane. And so, but you know, the alcoholic like me has such contempt that he's not even aware of the contempt that he has. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm already looking, even though I know this is my last leg, I'm already looking for the reasons why it's not going to work. And so, I remember they gave us the tour of the facility, and they said, now 90% of people that are here, that are never going to get out, are here because of drugs and alcohol. And you know what my mind said? They're just weak. I'm getting out in 28 days. And that's exactly what, I mean, I got out in 28 days, cops got off my back, and I went right back doing the same old thing. And so it took 11 more years. But on that third night, they took me to the Cooper Group over in Arlington, and they said, pray in the morning, ask God to keep you sober. It's hitting real hard when you're in detox. But I mean, I've seen some people sneak some stuff in detox. It's like, man, why would you do that? You're in detox. I was sponsoring a guy one time. I dropped him off at this place, and he was ready to go. And then his wife calls me about 30 minutes after I dropped him off, and she said, he's checked out. I said, what do you mean checked out? She said, I don't know, he checked out. So I called him. I said, what are you doing? He said, well, he won't give me my pain meds. I said, it's called detox. They're going to help you with that, okay? He goes, oh, okay. So he checks back in. It costs him a lot of money to do that, you know? They charge you for that stuff. And so, but he said, pray in the morning. Ask God to keep you sober. Read the material. Get a sponsor. We're going to be taking you to some meetings. You're going to find somebody there that's going to share something that you might relate to. Get their phone number. And then thank God at the end of the day for keeping you sober. I was like, okay, that seems pretty reasonable. But I had heard that in '87. And so I went to hit my knees, and God gave me a vision. And like I said, it took me 20 years sober to realize what he really gave me was a vital spiritual experience. But I called it a vision for a long time, and it was like this fast. And it's amazing to me what goes on in the alcoholic's mind in the flash of a second. There's one particular part in the book I'm sure you are aware of where it talks about I've got two thoughts going on at any given time. I've got a sane thought, and then I've got this irrational thought. And generally, because of the way I am, the irrational thought always wins out. Because the sane thought requires discipline that I don't have. And it requires a whole lot of other things. Acknowledgement, it requires honesty. It requires a lot of pain. I've experienced more pain in sobriety than I ever did drinking, because I drank, and it worked. I didn't have to experience any pain. And so, I go to hit my knees, and the way I described the vision was like, I was in the middle of this cathedral, and I could just see, and there was all these doors, and they were all open, and I could sit for 360 degrees, and it was like, I felt like God was saying to me, son, whatever you want to do now, you can do it. Else you're not a slave to drugs and alcohol anymore. And I'm going to tell you, I grabbed a hold of that, and I still live it today. But what was interesting to me then doesn't interest me at all now. And there was different things in those windows, right? Things that appealed to me then. But then there was things that I was like, there was impossibilities that I could experience that I wasn't even aware of. And today I just choose to live in the wonderment. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what's going to go on. I don't know what's going to be presented. And the funny thing is, my life today is, everything that I get to do today, it wouldn't have interested me then, 28 years ago. All the things that are important to me today, it wouldn't have interested me at all. And it has nothing to do with anything that I thought mattered. But I grabbed a hold to that. And I dove into this thing with all fours. I had pretty wide open schedule. You know, wasn't a lot of people wanted to be around. And so and you only hang around people that, I don't know about y'all, but I only hang around people that drink like I drank. I remember we used to sit across the street from the Legacy group where I got sober and drink. And then you see the nice cars and the people. And Legacy was a real suit and tie group. And I'm just electrician, mechanic. And but it didn't make them no difference. They accepted me. They just said, their simple message was, we don't care why you're here. We're just glad you're here. We're just glad you're here. We don't know if you're alcoholic or not. But if you'll come back and try this thing, your life will change. We know that. If you'll try these suggestions, your life will change. So they didn't even talk about the drinking. They started talking about the behavior and the action that I've got to take and begin to take. And then there was such a demonstration of this thing, just like this group. When I walked up here today, I wish I'd have walked up here and then, yeah, I changed on the side of the road, y'all. I drove up here in shorts. I'd still be in the shorts. But anyway, when I walked up here today, I could just feel the energy. You know, prior to COVID, I had told John, I used to go with John a lot when he was speaking. He'd speak at flourishing groups. And you could just kind of feel, you know, and it was a concern of mine that AA was kind of, you know, losing its membership to a certain degree. Go and visit certain groups that once were flourishing, or, you know, they're kind of floundering, and it concerned me greatly. And because this thing, it didn't save my life; it gave me a life. And I talked to John about it too, as well. And so the interesting thing at Primary was, which is my home group now in Arlington. I've been going there, gosh, how long have I been going there? 14 years, 16 years. And the interesting thing about Primary was we had a panel of old timers and long timers and newcomers, and they met on a month of Sundays. And we used to have 50 people at new meetings on average every day, and probably 70 to 90 people every evening at the 7 p.m. every day. And so, and it was just, you know, blossoming and growing, so we had this panel get together. They wanted to comb through all of our archives, and it wasn't an effort to change anything as more as it was an effort to clarify and simplify. You know, job positions, longevity, requirements, and all that kind of thing. And they presented what was, in my book, what was one of the most beautiful presentations of unity that I've ever seen in Alcoholics Anonymous. And the amazing thing is the group was in 100% agreement to adopt it. And a month later, COVID hit. And so, and it wasn't quite a pandemic yet, but most of the old timers quit coming to the meeting. And so we formed some groups to be sure that the old timers were taken care of, that their needs were being met, and things like that. And they did not know that because they weren't coming to meetings. But they were in fear, obviously. And anyway, came down to word got out as my sponsor at the time. He said, I'm going to suggest we close the group. And I said, you're not even coming to the meetings. Why would you suggest closing the group? He said, well, you know, we need to do the right thing. And I said, well, I don't know what this pandemic thing is going to do, but I certainly know what's going to happen if I don't have a fellowship with Alcoholics Anonymous. And I said, you do what you want to do. And so and went down to a 50-50 deal. And they had forgotten that when they revised our bylaws and all, that they had, see, prior to that, if the group had a 50-50 split, the chairperson would break the tie, okay? They had forgotten they had adopted the GSO's recommendation of 2/3 unanimity. So they thought they had it down. And so there's purpose for me telling the story. And so it got down to, and interestingly, here's what's really interesting to me when I reflect back on this, is the people who were voting to close, I'm not gonna say they wanted, they weren't in agreement with the reasons why they wanted to close. Some of them had selfish reasons. They wanted to run their own Zoom meeting. You know, they would do this and all that kind of thing. This is all good. It's all good. My one sponsor used to tell me, he said, the worst thing that can happen, Paul, is we get an opportunity to learn something. As long as we don't drink, we'll be okay. But they'd forgotten they had adopted that 2/3 unanimity. And so we were able to maintain keeping the doors open. And, but now, some of the people that wanted to keep the group open, their sponsors weren't coming. So our membership dwindled more and more. And one night I'm at a meeting and getting ready to chair, and I'm looking out, and I'm looking at the meeting, and there's like 8 people there. What once was 70 to 90 people. And so, I don't know about y'all, A Vision for You is the first chapter I read. I mean, I'm a backwards alcoholic. It just sounded like hope to me. And I couldn't relate to Bill's story. I'm not a bank, I'm more of a bank robber instead of a stockbroker. So I just couldn't relate. But, so I read A Vision for You because it had hope. And if you stick around here for a while, you're going to have those down times. And our material tells us that those are necessities, a continuous look at our assets and liabilities, real necessities. And then we find that, as I continue to do this thing, I see my liabilities. That later, the amazing paradox about this deal is, what once was a liability now becomes my greatest asset, because it places me in a position to help so many other people. And anyway, so that's one night. So I've always, up until this moment, I've always looked at, when I get in those down times, I would always reflect back, and I'd open A Vision for You and I would read it, and it would take me to that early sobriety where I was in complete surrender, where whatever you said, I just did it. Mm-hmm. I didn't fight. I was done fighting when I got back here. Thank God. If I'd have had $1 more or one more decision I thought was mine, I'd have never got sober. And that's why, that's what turns that vision into a vital experience. Because that's what's got to happen for the rebellious, defiant alcoholic that I am. See, it says, what once were the guiding forces, thoughts, and actions are suddenly cast aside, and a whole brand new set of ideas and concepts are immediately adopted. And that's what happened to me. I didn't realize that's what happened to me, but that's what happened to me. And what makes that vital, I already said it, but I'm going to say it again. What makes that vital is when you're hard-headed, self-absorbed, all the other selves that are involved with an alcoholic that he's not even aware of, like I still sometimes am, that's what's got to happen. And so that's what I saw in that vision. See, I saw something different, and it looked appealing to me. And so I immediately adopted this way of life. But where was I going with this? So I was reading A Vision for You. And I would always read A Vision for You. And I turned to 152 this one night, getting ready for a topic. And I turned to A Vision for You, and it's like, He says, I know I must get over alcohol, but how can I have you a sufficient substitute? He says, yes, there is a substitute, but it is vastly more than that. It's a whole lot more than just a substitute. Right? So there you will find release from care, boredom, and worry. Your imagination will be fired. The most satisfactory years of your existence lie ahead. Thus we find fellowship, and so will you. And it hit me. That's not talking about when you first got sober. That's talking about from right now. From this moment. From right now. We read it at every meeting. Maybe you find him next week, next year, or when you first got here. No, now. Right now. And I went, wow, that's talking about from this moment. Even today, this moment. It's amazing to me that the alcoholic of my time, never was I more in the moment than I was sitting at the bar or other places, you know, doing what I thought I needed to do. And why it's so hard to stay in the moment in sobriety, especially early on. And the reason it is because I can't stand myself. That's why I drank. I couldn't stand myself. I didn't know I couldn't stand myself, but I lived in a world of delusion. I didn't know that either. But I had this world of grandeur created. I told my current wife, I said, I'm going to spoil you. She said, aren't you living in your truck? She's made me live up to it, trust me. It's insane the stuff we say to each other, you know. And they believe it. She believed it. Oh, okay, sounds good. Well, I wore pressed jeans, so that makes a difference. I mean, isn't that something? Only alcoholics will do that. You know what I mean? Living in a truck, he's wearing pressed jeans. I mean, it's crazy. I say, you know, you want to find out why we drink? Hang around us while we're sober. You'll see. We're in the rooms. I mean, you're in some of the rooms I'm in. It's like you're amongst the very best of the worst of the worst. But anyway, so it's talking about from this moment forward. So if you're new, or even if you've been around for a long time, and you may be going through one of those down times, I share that in all earnestness. This material is about today. It's about this moment. All of our material is about from this moment forward. I've learned to serve the God of now. Yeah, Hearts Anonymous. I've learned to serve the God of this moment. It's in the one-on-one. It's in the fellowship. And it's not just inside the rooms. It's not contained in here. It's everywhere I go. Everywhere I go, I feel it. And what I started to say earlier is about being rocketed into that fourth dimension. I'm just starting to get an inkling of that. I hadn't even really tapped into it. But I'll get a little piece of information. I'm all of a sudden I'm an expert on it. I could open a treatment facility after 30 days. Guarantee you, it'd have been the best in the country. It's amazing how quick we become experts in alcoholics. And then the old timers, they just smile, you know, and they know. Keep coming back. Keep coming back. You know. And only newcomers want to change the group, you know what I mean? Right. I couldn't wait. I couldn't wait to get on the steering committee that wasn't doing it right. You know, they said, we're going to make an exception for you. You know, I had to have 6 months. And this old timer, he took me under his wing. He said, we're going to make an exception. He said, I'm going to put you on the steering committee. I said, well, you got to have 6 months. He goes, we're going to make an exception in your case. You need the extra. The group needs you. Yeah, they do. You know, I remember, you know, I had John's tape, so I wanted to be this, you know, big speaker or whatever. And I know ego was involved in that. I mean, come on, who are we kidding? I mean, I still have an ego today. I'm not going to sit up here and try to tell you all I don't, because I do. But I'm not controlled by it today. That's the difference. I'm not controlled by it. I had fun with it. I remember Lisa would come home and she'd say, so-and-so said they heard you share at a meeting. And they really liked it. Who was it? And then that same guy said, Paul can do how it works. He's got it memorized. Go ahead, Paul, read it. But he knew my sponsor. See, my sponsor had me read how it works at every meeting for the first 30 days. That was the deal. And there was this guy who'd been around, struggled. And he said, you can't read how it works in every meeting. I said, hey, man, that's what my sponsor told me to do. He goes, well, you can't. And then he got drunk. I said, see, you should have read how it works. But, it's hilarious, comical, but yet tragic. And the thing that I'm thinking about in this moment is out of Bill's story where he says, there's scarcely been any form of trouble that has not been overcome among us. Scarcely any form of. And he goes on to talk about, he sees families righted, standings, regained, places in the community. And it's just simple. And I love in the 12 and 12, we don't really talk about goals in Alcoholics Anonymous a lot. So it's one day at a time. Can't make a commitment. It's one day at a time. And but in one of the chapters, I'm not going to tell you where it's at. You got to find it. But in one of the chapters, it says the sponsor points out that attendance at a few meetings in the absence of alcohol is very good indeed, but it is bound to be a far cry from permanent sobriety and a contented, useful life. See, I didn't know I was looking for permanent sobriety. I'm just here long enough to get the heat off of me. I didn't know I was looking for contentment. And it's a real simple formula, see. It always amazes me when you go to meetings about God's will. The book is very clear. The big book is very clear. There's no mystery in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. There's one line in there that I always love being in newcomer meetings. There's always one line, and I always like to share in newcomer meetings, and it's like, okay, I'm sure you related. You probably related to some things that were shared in here, but there's one line in our book that'll nail you. And it says the alcoholic will try to prove by every form of self-deception and experimentation that he's an exception to the rule. Therefore, non-alcoholic. So if you're trying to prove you're not, you are. Get them every time on that one. Because people who aren't alcoholic are not trying to prove they're not. I'm not trying to prove I'm not alcoholic if I'm not. It's only when I am alcoholic. Only alcoholics are trying to prove they're not alcoholic. It's real simple. But watch this flip. It's a real simple formula. When I know my purpose, which is to be of maximum service to God and my fellows in any kind of way. In any kind of way. Not just in the rooms. Wherever I go, I see somebody in need, I've been given. And it's my job to share that. What I've been given. Not just recovery. In any kind of way. And when I know my purpose, I've got a sense of contentment. And when I've got a sense of contentment, I don't need to get drunk. I don't need to change how I feel. It's pretty simple when you think about it. I know what my purpose is today. Trust God to help others clean house. It's real simple. But I want to get, like John says, get the black light out. Try to figure out what they really mean here. It's all in black and white. Nothing to figure out. They've already figured it out. You just got to follow the deal. But see, I got that contempt going on. I don't even know I've got the contempt. It amazes me. The alcoholic mind is an incredible thing. When I share with people, I told a guy this morning, I said, look, I'm speaking to the disease. I'm not speaking to you. There's a difference. I've come to understand that it's more important for me to listen than to speak. See, when I begin to listen, then I become my prayer today. I'm going to tell y'all what I prayed for in there a while ago. I thanked God, as I understand Him, for giving me this opportunity to come in front of you people today. And I meant that, and God knows I meant that. It really is an honor. I never thought when I was a newcomer I would get an honor like this. And I thanked Him for that. But I've been around here long enough to know that I don't know who I'm speaking to. I said, I hope that people see you in the way I conduct myself. Not in what I say, in the way I conduct myself. Because see, that's what y'all were for me. I mean, there's all this excitement, there's all this energy, everybody's happy, until somebody's got to take the trash out. Who's taking the trash out? You ain't got many volunteers for that, you know. But there's all this happy excitement. And when you knew, man, it beats anything I've ever been a part of. I haven't had to go to jail in 28 years. It used to be a weekly deal. In 5th grade, I went to reform school. I didn't know they were preparing me for prison. But that's what they were doing. There was no recovery there. They was trying to keep me out of more trouble. So, I have to share this with y'all. This occurred to me last night. Like I said, I was in Oklahoma last night. When I got the call to speak here, my ego wanted me to be here. I'm just going to be honest. I wanted to come and be here. I wanted to come and speak in front of y'all. I enjoy doing this. I learn something every time. Because my ears were open today. And last night, my older sister, she was there at my daughter's graduation. I quit school in 10th grade. First time I quit school in 6th grade, my mom found out. I didn't tell her he could go to school. I really didn't. The world was coming to an end at some point. I remember I told her, I said, why? I said, why don't I need to go to school? The world's coming to an end. She said, he's going to need people to help rebuild the earth. I said, God, he don't need me. I'm just going to play with my Hot Wheels, you know what I mean? She said to me 18 years ago, she said, you need to start instilling the idea of college into Sophia. And I said, yeah, I do. But I knew 18 years ago I wasn't disciplined. And I'm going to tell you, I'm still not disciplined enough to prepare for a child to go to college. Okay? I'd like to tell you I am, but I'm not. I'm better. And I remember thinking, I hope she'll go to college. You know what I mean? That would be cool. But there's no way my daughter's ever going to go to college. The last summer before her senior year, I sent this to my sister. I said, you know, you told me to start instilling this in Sophia when she was like 2 years old, 18 years ago. Or actually it was 16 years ago. So she's saying, no, 18 years ago. I forget, time flies. She's already 21. And I said, and I knew then I wasn't going to have the discipline it was going to require to set aside money for her. And so that last summer before her senior year, it was evident she deserved to go to college because she had worked her butt off. She'd seen you people. She picked up. She's not an alcoholic. She doesn't drink, she doesn't smoke, she doesn't cuss. She has a relationship with God. I think they switched her in the hospital. I don't know where this kid came from. I mean, I think about it. If I'd have had a son like me, I would be in jail. I would be. I don't know how my father put up with me. I really don't. I don't know how that man put up with me. But that last summer, I was really stressing and ashamed. And I was in my teens. No, I was in my 20s of sobriety. Because that was just 4 years ago. So I was 24 years sober. I was ashamed. You hadn't done anything very good for college. And so I get out of my truck. I live on a court. And I parked out in the street for some reason this day. And right as I walked past my truck, I heard God say, "I got it, son." And I never thought about it again. She graduated a year early, summa cum laude. She's been accepted into Texas A&M law. I need a good lawyer. Because I got her sooner. That's AA. See, those are the miracles that I still need today. I come here for the miracles. I come to share my miracles. I don't come to AA today because I think about drinking. I come to AA today to help participate in your miracles and be a part of it. I get to participate in God's work today. That didn't interest me when I was new, but it's what my life is about today. It's the change that takes place. It's the 12-step in action. I mean, there is such a thing as 12-step work. Don't get me wrong. And there is such a thing as service work. Oftentimes confused. But really, the 12-step is about, what does it say? Practicing these principles in all my affairs. So therefore, it has to become a way of life. And then we learn, I learned, anyway, I can only speak for me, that I'm serving this God of limitless expansion, as it talks about in Keys to the Kingdom. 5 weeks ago, I'm sitting in a meeting, and I love this, and I've spoke on this, and I've shared this with a lot of people, been in a lot of meetings, where it says, next we decided in this drama life, God's going to be the director. He's the director, we're the agents. He's the father, we're the children. You know what I heard sitting in that meeting with 28 years of sobriety? You never wanted a father. I didn't know I thought that. I didn't know I felt that way. 28 years sober. So wherever you're at, the reason I'm sharing that is because God will constantly disclose more to you and to us. See to it that your relationship with Him is right, and great events will come to pass for you, and countless others. Thank God for having me.